Hello, everybody. And thank you for inviting Airbus and thank you for inviting me. And interesting topic, human factors in flight operations, accidents as such. And there's something very near and dear to my heart. Today, during this particular session, it's not only me, I'll be subsequently be supported by Captain Nitin Anand, Captain Gaurav Pathak, Captain Karunya, and Captain Nikhil Mathen. So it's a team of us who will be here, it's not only me. So I'll start off with a presentation to set the tone, and thereafter these experts will also come in, and we'll have discussions, which I'll moderate, and subsequently followed with a question and answer session. Okay, so let's see what do we have here. Those of us who are aware of the icao document of 9859, the safety management manual, there's a particular diagram there, which basically says that going back into 1950s, it was technical era, when the components would be failing, which would be leading to aircraft serious incident or accidents. Thereafter, once the technology started to settle in, it started to move towards accidents continuing to happen, but it's more to do with the human element. So that got bifurcated as the human era. Subsequently, time moved on. Aviation kept increasing, aircraft numbers kept increasing, accidents continued to happen. Then the focus started shifting towards how an organization actually is affecting or causing an accident, or was it contributing towards an accident. Then the focus started shifting towards that whether it is the entire system in some form is actually contributing towards an accident. However, the topic today, we are talking about the human factors of it. So keep this particular diagram in mind, because I will definitely keep referring back to it. And if you all want to have a look, I'll accordingly bring the slide back also. So Airbus publishes the fatal accident, rather commercial aircraft accident statistics every year, which gets updated in the month of March. So this is an extract from there. It very clearly shows from 1959 to 2023, the light gray ones are the number of movements which have taken place in aviation, the number of millions of flights which have taken place. And you can see the dip which took place during COVID. The black bars which are sitting there are the fatal accidents. This is for the entire commercial aviation. We are talking about for Western jet airplanes. Obviously, you'll see that 2023, the year has been good, that there has been no per se fatal accident. However, I'll touch upon it for 2023 again in the next slide. So this is the yearly rate which is there per million departure. You will constantly see how that number of accidents kept reducing over the years, the amount of effort which has taken place. And it is not an individual's effort, it's the entire industry which has been working from the west to the east, and people like you who have supported the industry to enhance its aviation safety standards. And you will see clearly that the rate of accidents have started to reduce. So I go back here, I'll go back. What is not coming up on the slide here is 2023. There were 2 Airbus accidents which took place. They were hull losses, but they were not directly related to the aircraft. The issue was, in one case, probably some of you would have seen the video of a fire tender coming in onto the runway when an aircraft was taking off in South America. So a collision took place, the aircraft went off the runway, and the aircraft was completely damaged. So that's a part of the statistics. And similarly, one in Africa when a bike rider came onto the runway in the night time, which led to an accident, causing damage to the aircraft, and it was a complete hull loss. So that is also a part of the statistics. And the statistics which is there, we will further see further up as such. This is something I would like to touch upon, the 4th generation of aircraft which are there, starting from the old jet airplanes, the caravels and all. Probably some of you would have heard about it, the airplanes which got designed about 5 to 6 decades ago. Then subsequently we move to the right, the 2nd generation of airplanes, which is the A300s. In this, the auto throttles came in, the GPWS came in. So definitely, if you see the accident bar chart, the number of fatal accidents started reducing. GPWS itself as one equipment has helped civil aviation industry to reduce its number of accidents by close to about 70%. That is what that technology can do, one equipment which was brought in. Subsequently, technology further improved, and then we had airplanes like the A300, 600, the A310s, the generation 3 airplanes, in which we started getting a moving map displays per se. So 3 questions which pilots need to answer every time. Where am I coming from? Where am I now? Where am I going? This started to get addressed with the glass cockpits. So overnight, the situational awareness of a pilot started to increase. Again, you will see in the accident statistics, the number of accidents started coming down. Further, we moved on to generation 4, which is currently the airplanes which are flying around. And this brought in something called a flight envelope protection. What does it do? It basically keeps the pilot within a safe environment and when you're flying around. If you tend to go beyond a certain limit, there are protections which try to avoid letting you go into that area. Of course, there can be failures which this protection may not be available, which the pilot is trained for. Now, this particular slide becomes important because it tells you the rate of accidents between generation 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now if you look at this particular one, the one sitting on top is generation 1 aircraft. You can see the rate of accidents which are there. Then subsequently generation 2, generation 3, and generation 4. You can clearly see that with the technology being brought into the flight deck, the accident rates have reduced. However, our endeavor as Airbus is that to constantly keep enhancing the technology so that the flight crew keep getting supported to make the right decisions. And this is what I had mentioned, generation 3 and generation 4. You can see the difference of accident rates. Generation 3 is the one with glass cockpit which came in, which had alpha floor protection, and it is 0.11 accident rate. Whereas when it comes to generation 4, it is decimal 0.03. But if I add those two accidents which I was referring to, it is basically decimal 0.04. Clearly indicates that technology has made a difference in accident rates and it has helped reduce the accident rates. So let's move forward. DG Saab quoted that in the given number of accidents which are taking place, the incident and accident related to human beings, it's not only flight crew. It could be flight crew, maintenance staff, ATC. The human element is now causing 80% of the event. You can see technology one which is there, the green color, it has started reducing. But when it comes down to human causes, it is actually somewhere sitting at close to 80%. So definitely an area where a lot of work needs to be done. So what is human factors? I don't want to get into the icao definition. It's a nice long one. Sometimes it just complicates the matter. I would rather go towards a much more simpler one. Anything that affects a person's performance is a part of human factors. And when it comes to day-to-day working also, like probably some of you have driven to this place today, when you reach this place, you think, oh, actually, when did I cross Safdarjung Airport? You didn't even realize it. That is something telling you there was something which was affecting your thought process. You lost situational awareness, and it came to a point where you actually arrived at your destination safely. But there was a point where you lost the situational awareness. This is the time where technology comes in, and it helps you to see that things don't go wrong. Today, most of us navigate with a Google map sitting in front. God bless those people who actually designed Google Map, because today navigation on roads and cities also have become so comfortable. If not, you could be going around in circles and trying to figure out how to reach your destination. So what all does human factors involve? So where does this term come from? It is nothing which came from aviation. Actually, it's basically psychologists who got together and started studying accidents in various areas, nothing to do with aviation. They studied about hospital-related accidents, the 3-mile accident in USA, Chernobyl, all these ones. When they started studying, they started realizing that in all these places, the technology is sitting right on top. Absolutely high level of technology. Let me ask you all a question. How many of you have read the Challenger accident report, Rogers Commission? Show of hands, has anybody read? There I see Captain Nikhil, Mathen, he has read. The reason I quote this case is that it is from a space agency, which is the topmost one. Normally when we look at space, nuclear industry, these are the topmost guys that's sitting there. But when that accident took place and they started investigating, they realized that in that accident also, there was a human element involved. There were people who were trying to say something in the system, trying to bring things across, but unfortunately, the voice did not reach the right people at the right time, which finally led to that particular accident. So if you have not read the Rogers Commission report, I would definitely request you, take time out to read it. It's a very interesting report. So the reason I bring this picture out is, it tells you that human factors is not from one field. It is from all these fields which are actually giving inputs for this particular field of study. And it is more so in terms of psychologists doing research, trying to figure out how human beings actually, where they are missing out, which is leading to accidents. There is some confusion in the system. People believe that human factors and CRM are the same. No, sir, it is not the same. Human factors, as I mentioned, is a study, a field of study, which involves a lot of these brainy guys, gurus and all. They are looking into various things of accident. When it comes to AIB, I'm talking with reference to accidents. And there are elements which are there. There are behavior and thinking process, fatigue, psychology, various points which are there, which are elements. However, all these gurus, when they were doing research, accidents continued to happen, though the technology has improved. Then they realized that there is some missing area, so let's start creating a program which basically flight crew can develop it and run it for the fellow flight crew members, for them to understand these elements in a better and an easier way. So CRM got developed. So in CRM, we got company culture and policies, international culture, leadership, teamwork. So there is a very clear-cut format which has been listed out by the regulator, the airlines adopt it, and subsequently deliver that course. But if that was the solution, why are accidents still happening? Over a period of time, people started realizing that there are one set of people who are on the left side who are researchers who talk about human factors. Then the airlines actually said, oh, CRM needs to be done. There are a few guys who are good in CRM, let them start reading about it, train from someplace, and start delivering these courses. So now what happened was, CRM started getting delivered, tick in the box from the regulator side. However, the problem was, when CRM started happening in the classroom, it never got transferred into the simulator or the flight deck. Because the trainers who were there, they were not CRM facilitators. So they would believe saying that, oh, this is all reading stuff, you guys do what you have to do, but this is how you fly the airplane. So people who were actually delivering the CRM program and the trainee, midway started getting confused that one side accidents are happening, we are supposed to do CRM training, but when it comes down to doing flight training, surprisingly the flight trainers who are there do not give that amount of weightage to the CRM program. Then, as I said, accidents have continued to happen, technology is continuing to improve. Then there was a think about it, and they said, no, in time to come, trainers who are actually CRM facilitators are delivering training where it has got more meaning, and the trainees who are coming out understand the elements which are affecting them during flight operations, and thereby reducing the number of occurrences taking place. So that was one part of it. But then came the checkers in the system, the so-called examiners. They're of a little higher decade, old guys trying to do some work. So they kind of did not fall into this bracket. So now we had pilots, we got instructors, but the examiners got left out. So the ICAO and the DGCA have come out with 9 competencies. The one in blue color are the non-technical skills. So if you look at the non-technical skills, there are 5 in number compared to the technical skills, which are 4 in number. Basically, what is being conveyed here, the weightage for non-technical skill is higher than the technical skill. Of course, I'm not trying to say that you should not know the aircraft technical. You need to know your aircraft. You need to know how to fly that aircraft. You need to know what your aircraft limitations are. However, it is also important for the individual and the crew. They understand the elements which are there in blue. During the inaugural session, DG Saab and the minister spoke about when the investigations happened, they found elements of communication. They found issues related to leadership and teamwork, problem solving and decision making, situational awareness, management of information which is coming in, and workload management. So the reason I'm bringing this thing out is that accidents are continuing to happen, though they are in number-wise, they are on the lower side. However, when you investigate, you find that these elements are coming up. But what is the advantage of this today? So today, when the investigations take place, these competencies are also sitting there. So when an airline is investigating their events taking place, it is a good idea to look at these elements. When a serious incident or an accident takes place, which is NX 13, when you investigate, you need to start bringing out your investigation report where these items are also captured. Important thing to understand is that these information which is getting captured, it helps you populate the data, which can be fed back into your training division to see that your training quality improves and the accidents related to human-related issues can be controlled. So there are various models of human factors. Shell is there, Shellco is there, PEEP is there. But here I'm going to talk about the HFACS, Human Factors Analysis and Classification System. Important thing to remember is, again, this is a research model, good for data capture. When you're doing an incident or an accident analysis, a good thing is to go through this particular module. I'm not trying to say this is the only module, there are other modules also. However, this brings it out in a step-by-step manner. So, how many of you have heard about James Reason's model of accident causation? Good, I'm so happy to see so many hands went up. This particular module is based on the James Reason's module only. Okay, so James Reason's model, which is the last one, the block which is sitting there, is the unsafe act. So you'll see here on the HFACS model also unsafe act. Then you got precondition to the unsafe acts. Then you got supervisory, or you can say unsafe supervision, and then the organization influences. It's the same model which has been developed in 2001 to see that how data can be captured in a easier and a better way. I must tell you one thing, from 2014 onwards, AIB India has been using this particular model. And Pasi sir is sitting somewhere here, I saw him in the morning, and I wanted to acknowledge that, saying that 2014, he's the one in an accident which was there in Jaipur. We were investigating together, and he was the lead investigator. So that was the time this model got introduced, and we started realizing the benefits of it and how easy it was to start segregating which is the area in which particular contributory factor is coming in. Again, 2 things I must remind you. One is data capturing, the other part is the analysis part. It just makes your life easy this way. And when you're looking at an event taking place, you don't start from top to bottom. In this particular analysis tool, you start from bottom up. Why bottom up? Because by far, when an event takes place, we all say, who was the person involved, what happened, and we start analyzing things. Because so much of data is available, by and large, you can actually zero down to the unsafe act done by the individuals involved. I'll not say flight crew or engineer, it could be anybody. But then, as I said in my first slide, when you are investigating, it is no more about only human factors as the individual sitting towards the end. It is now we are looking at the system in total. So in Airbus, we have a statement which says, safe aircraft, safely operated in a safe environment. So when we are investigating also, all these elements needs to be looked into. Okay, so unsafe act is something which is sitting right in front, that okay, this is what happened, data analysis says that who was the person involved. Then what were the preconditions? This also tends to get covered in an investigation report. But now comes the serious matter. The supervisory failures which are taking place, the unsafe supervision part and the organization failure. We are actually very shy in talking about these things. So gentlemen, we have to be very clear about one thing. When we are investigating, there's no getting away. It is our duty as an investigator to look at all these elements and bring forward that these are the contributory factors. Annex 13 still talks about a probable cause. Some investigating authorities, namely like Australian Transportation Safety Board and all, have moved away from the concept of probable cause. They have filed a difference with ICAO, and they have said that we will only now come up with contributory factors so that the system gets addressed. If not, when you look at only the probable cause, we tend to look at that particular person or that particular way it was done, and we want to address that, and we believe that the system is working fine after that. Whereas the accident statistics say something different. So this diagram basically gives you a comparison between the James Reason's model, the way we look at, and the HFACS model which is there. It was just brought out as a comparison. And you can take any of the events which have taken place in recent past, and you can try to fit it into this, and you'll see that how easy it is to categorize them with the right intent, saying that what is the data which is coming out. So Airbus, we carried out, and we have a very strong investigation team. We support regulators. If there is an accident or AIBs around the world, if we get invited, we support investigations. And or if there is an event which takes place for an operator, they can contact us. If it's not an Annex 13, we can do a technical investigation and we can give you feedback on that. So we have a document called Flight Operations Briefing Notes, which is specifically for human factors related items for incident and accidents. What have we seen? So what we have seen is situation recognition and crew diagnosis. So please recall the 9 elements, the 5 soft skills, non-tech skills which I'm talking about. So you'll see situation recognition and crew diagnosis. Procedures, that means SOP application in various form. It could be flight crew, engineering, anything as such. Human performance limitations. Okay, fatigue, window of circadian low. Today fatigue was also brought out, window of circadian low. So basically telling how people get affected while they are doing work. 4 o'clock in the morning, the engineer is on the tarmac lighting is less. 6 o'clock, he needs to push the airplane out. It is thunderstorm, raining, or maybe at 49 degrees. People do get affected by these things. Just because there's a checklist doesn't mean that he'll be doing everything 100% correct. There is an element which is actually affecting him. And that is what is important to recognize, especially as investigators, that look, there is an element which is affecting his performance and can cause an issue. Operating environment, as I mentioned, 49 degrees heat. Coming into land, maybe in London Heathrow with crosswinds about 40 knots. All these things will affect, after flying for 8 to 10 hours. Communication was brought out earlier, but this is one element which we find is there in practically in all the events which are taking place. Especially when the technology is improving, we find that the flight crew communication is getting affected, and we find that the communication levels are on the lower side. That's why our standard operating procedures very clearly define what is an active monitoring process, what is that the pilot monitoring needs to call out, how it needs to get acknowledged by the pilot flying. Then, if you do not manage the workload, especially when high intensity runway operations are taking place, we are finding rushed approaches taking place, especially if there are some colleagues from ATC, there are certain arrivals into Delhi. The airplane is practically on downwind, held at about 8 or 9,000 feet, and suddenly he'll make you turn further left onto intercepting the localizer. So these are causing rushed approaches and unstable approaches. So it will be a good idea between the operator and the ATC to share this kind of information so that people know exactly where the issue stands and how to address it. And the last slide. So what do we suggest as Airbus? What you should be doing? Define your company's safety culture and policies. Safety culture, which we talk about, is a positive safety culture, which is there in Annex 19. Worldwide, there's a lot of work which is going on. And one thing about positive safety culture, I'll tell you, is that please look into your number of reports which are coming in the organization. If you believe, if your number of reports, safety reports are on the lower side, it clearly tells you that you have an issue sitting with your safety culture. Or you are getting reports which are actually not hazard reports, but people are reporting just because they need to report. So you need to look at that. Then, what are your prevention strategies? James Reason spoke about 4 blocks which are there. So what are those blocks and how strong are they, and when did they get perforated? How many of you are aware of a Hendricks triangle? Great. So just for those who are not aware of it, Hendricks triangle, Hendricks was a gentleman, again a psychologist in 1931. He actually did a research and said, for every 3,000 reports which came in, safety reports I'm talking about, if you didn't do anything, it led to 300 events. Again, the organization culture did not permit much to do. Those 300 events led to 30 occurrences. Again, not much of work done here, it's okay, let it continue, we are good. It finally leads to one accident. So in net effect, to save one accident, you probably had 3,000 reasons where your report should have come to you. And that indicates to you that how strong a culture you need to build and how much should be your reporting which should be taking place. Effective CRM practices. I can say I have a CRM in my company, tick in the box. However, what is important is to see is that whether the CRM program which you're running in your organization, yes, does it touch all the elements which are there, which have been discussed? How did you constantly keep changing the elements? When I say elements, the modules, saying that how have you kept it updated so that it gets related to the current situation and the occurrences which are taking place for you, how are you addressing that through your CRM program? And as pilots, each of us have to have, in one is the SOPs which are sitting there. In addition to that, you with your experience need to constantly keep building your personal line of defenses. As Airbus, we have moved from generation 1 to generation 4. Technology is constantly getting enhanced. Why do we spend such a lot on technology? Because we believe that in case the experience levels are dropping, is there something which we can do more to support the pilot to make safer decisions? Hence, that is why we constantly keep investing. But before I finish off, the human element still remains. So I will now invite my 4 experts who are there onto the panel. Captain Nitin Anand. Captain Nitin Anand is Vice President for Air India's Corporate Safety. Captain Gaurav Pathak, Senior Vice President Safety for Akasa. Captain Karunya, Human Factors Manager from Air India Express Connect, and Captain Nikhil Mathen, okay, who is the Human Factors expert from Indigo. Thank you all for joining in. Okay. So gentlemen, it's important to keep one thing in mind. These 4 gentlemen who are here, they carry probably collectively more than 1 lakh of hours of flight time. One lady, my apologies. Okay. They carry about more than 100,000 hours of flight experience. And these are the people who constantly work behind the scene to see that Indian aviation remains safe. So can we have a clap for them? Because these are the people who make them safe, you know. And the good part is they're all practical people. So though I'm not expecting them to be talking much of theory as such, because when it comes to theory, it once in a while gets difficult. So we will keep it as practical as possible, less figures as possible. Okay? Great. So before, I will not take much time. So let's start off with only the lady who's there. I think we should give the privilege to her, saying that Captain Karunya. So Captain Karunya, as I mentioned, she's an active A320 examiner pilot, flies with Air Asia India Connect, sorry, and now which is Air India Express Connect, my apologies. Okay, so I just wanted to understand from you, I think there's a mic which is there in front. What would be your thoughts about human factors and how would you like to go about addressing issues in your organization?
First of all, thank you, Captain Dhruv, for having me here. You talked about human factors, a wonderful presentation you made here. And the brass tacks is the entire program is geared towards reducing and preventing human error. And I think that this is where I'd like to share a few ideas of mine. And I'll take a few minutes of yours. Okay. You know, I was going through this interview with Dr. Eric Holnagel, okay, the aviation, I think he's an industrial safety expert and a very renowned psychologist. And this interview was conducted back in 2008. I was going through it and it said, he made a very interesting suggestion. You know, he said that in recognizing that human error means different things to different people, it might be best for this poorly defined and misunderstood term to be abandoned altogether. Quite a radical idea, don't you all think? But when we consider it a little closely, you know, when we think about it and we delve into it, this idea, it becomes a lot more attractive and appealing. Why? Because I think there are too many drawbacks of this term human error. Okay, consider this: anytime there's an accident or an incident that happens, it's very often attributed to human error. Okay, when in fact it offers very little explanation or information about the underlying issues. Okay, I was reading this accident report, ASIANA 214, that happened back in 2013 in San Francisco. Okay, and that report actually had a section to describe the root causes of the accident. And interestingly, what I found was these items mentioned, which was incorrect descent profile or incorrect management of descent, incorrect procedures, inadequate knowledge of automation. Okay? So one would imagine if you read that report that all the pilot competencies, all the crew competencies that should have prevented that accident from happening was somehow lacking on that particular day. But the truth is, in all probability, they were lacking all along, but were not able to be detected or remedied by the system. So from a human factors point of view, we now understand that these errors, these unsafe acts that you were talking about, you know, the crew competencies, okay, these are in fact symptoms. They are not root causes. Yeah? From an HF point of view, we now understand The root causes in all these cases are in fact the system deficiencies that led to poor competence, equipment, and procedures. And I think this is where I sense that there's been a huge shift in the mindset of the entire industry. Our regulators, the airlines, the organizations, in the way we look at human error. The fact that we all now we don't look at human error as happening in isolation, especially in the context of complex systems that you and I operate in. Okay? Complex systems where everything is interconnected, everything is dependent, related to, and influenced by other parts of the system. Okay? Where people are trying to meet multiple competing goals in a short period of time. We now understand as an industry that these complex systems are not inherently safe, and the human is not always to blame. Okay? So the challenge now is, for all of us is then how do we design and maintain systems that are more resilient? How do we build and manage systems where the risk of error is minimized? And I believe that we can do that in 3 ways. At the individual level, by introducing and by promoting initiatives like the CBTA, the competency-based approach to training, the EBT, like you mentioned. At the organization level, by promoting robust and thriving safety cultures with a huge emphasis on just culture. And finally, at the systems level, with a reinforced focus on error tolerance, error recovery, and not error suppression. Thank you very much.
Well said. So I go to Nikhil now. Okay, I was speaking to Nikhil before the session today, and I understand that as an organization, they're doing a lot of work on line operation safety audit. And one of the few organizations who is doing that, and of course I understand that Air India has also started this. So Nikhil, apart from as an instructor on the 320s, is deeply involved into the line operation safety audit. So Nikhil, I would like to hear from you, from the LOSA perspective, how much weightage do you want to give towards the non-tech skills? And what do you see are the challenges which are coming up, which you think, and how do you want to address them?
Thank you, Captain Dhruv, for this lovely presentation and inviting me to be a part of this esteemed panel. So line operation safety audit, for those of you who are aware and for some of you who may not be, is essentially, from a safety perspective, one can argue the only human-based observational system or program where you have a trusted and trained observer from the peer group. So for example, you can do a LOSA for flight operations, it would be a pilot. You can do a LOSA for maintenance, it would be an engineer. You can do a LOSA for ramp, it will be someone from the peer group who's trained on certain skill sets to sit in the working space of that individual set. So for example, an observer would sit on the flight deck and observe an entire set of sectors, 2 sectors on average, come back and write a long narrative of exactly what happened, and then do some data coding before the data comes back to us. And that's what Captain Dhruv was talking about. This coding that they do is essentially based on a system that is built on human factors called threat and error management. What this observer is seeing is what are the external influences that are affecting the flight crew on that particular day? How are they dealing with that external influence? It could be ATC, it could be weather. What are the errors that flight crew are making? Why are they making these errors? And after the error has happened, like Karunya said, it's not a question of avoiding those errors entirely. How are they managing those errors? Because on these flights, nothing bad happens. All LOSA flights, 99.9% of them, are non-event flights. So they are the flights that do not reach the safety office, do not reach the DGCA, do not reach the AIB. But this is where safety is created. So to borrow from Eric Holnagel, who is known to be the father of Safety 2, Safety 2 is built on a culture to say, why do we wait to learn from events that have gone wrong, that have a negative consequence? Let's try and leverage data. Even 80% of a very small percent of events lead to are because of human error. 99% of events are going well. And it's the same human being who's creating that safety. So the same 1% who didn't create that safety, the same 99% are creating safety. So what can we learn from them? And that's what essentially one such program is, the line operation safety audit. So what our program is telling us firstly to answer Captain Dhruv's question on how much of this program is built on human factors, this is a 100% human factor built program. So for every error that the crew makes, the observer also addresses a human factor-based competency, or a competency under the CBTA program, like Captain Dhruv pointed out, as to why they made that error. I'll give you a classic example, a simple and a classic example. So an aircraft is coming in for approach. Say, for example, an aircraft is coming in for approach to land at runway XYZ, and air traffic control asks the flight crew if they're able to take a shorter vector. A shorter vector is essentially a reduced number of track miles so they can land a little sooner. ATC is just doing their job. They're optimizing traffic flow, and this is completely normal procedure for them. Now, the flight crew sitting on the flight deck accepts that vector. In the process, they configure the aircraft late. It becomes a bit of a dodgy approach. But finally, at 1,000 feet, everything is stable and the aircraft lands safely. This is an event that will never reach the safety office because there was no event. There was no FDM event. There was no incident that took place. But this program would capture all of these details, the number of errors that the flight crew made, why they made those errors, and how they managed it in the end. So things like accepting an ATC clearance, lack of assertiveness within the cockpit, somebody didn't speak up in time, why did they not speak up? All of that comes out through this program. So what we're doing at Indigo is running this program on a monthly basis, on an everyday basis, and all the data that's captured is captured under the headers that Captain Dhruv displayed some time back. So we have data right from the time an aircraft pushes back from the stand till the time it reaches its parking gate at destination. Every error that the flight crew committed or not, every external factor that the flight crew had to deal with, how did they deal with, whether it was positive or negative, is measured against the competencies, the human factor competencies that Captain Dhruv displayed on the screen. Now the airline has a bird's eye view of 100% line flights where there was no training, it was not a surveillance flight, it was just another peer group member, another pilot sitting at the back, capturing this data, and now giving this to the safety department to say, hey, listen, this is the 99% or a piece of the pie of the 99% that now you can take. There was no incident, there was no accident, there was no event even. This is where nothing happened. Let's learn from these. And this is the data now that's fed into CRM training, that's fed into simulator training, that's fed into safety promotion to tell the pilots about what's going on. This is one example of how we do things. So the entire program is linked to human factors.
Captain, is this program de-identified?
Every bit of this program is de-identified. So you, let alone me, but let's say the SVP of the organization, if someone was to go in and ask them, okay, this is a really striking narrative. So much happened on this flight. Yes, it was not an event, but so much happened. So much could go wrong. Could you tell me the tail number? Could you tell me the flight number? Or just the observer's name? We don't capture any of that data. At source, we don't capture any of that data. So there's nothing to de-identify when nothing is identified itself. Let me put it that way. So the only person who's privy to this data, and the only person where we invest a lot of trust in the system is the observer who's on the flight deck. He or she is the only person who knows the flight that they were on, let alone the other flight. So after the observation is done, the report that they submit does not have a flight number, it does not have a tail number, it does not have even the date. It only has the basic demographic details, for example, departure, destination, because that's learning for us as an organization. If something is happening more in Delhi and less in Bombay, that's the only reason we capture those details. But it's a completely de-identified program and voluntary.
And do you believe that this kind of program can be run for engineering, ATC and all?
That's the long-term goal. Some parts of the world have programs like this, and I must confess that the success of a program like this is purely built on one factor and one factor only, because training and all of that can be done. I think all of us are smart, brilliant people here, and with a little bit of training, we can do magnificent things. But this is one such program, unlike a computer taking data. This is a program that is only built on trust. So it takes years and years and years for an organization to build trust, to put another pilot or another line maintenance engineer to come and say, okay, listen, I'm going to go into your cockpit or your day job for 9 hours a day. Do you trust me enough to show me what regular work looks like? That's what we're trying to capture. I want to see what regular work looks like because the organization trusts me to give them this picture and they will do something about it. So if there's trust across the organization, it can run in any frontline personnel. So ramp, maintenance, hangar, dispatch. Some companies around the world even do line operation safety audits, LOSAs in dispatch as well. So across the organization.
Right. Thank you, Nikhil.
Thank you, Captain.
So we shift our focus to Captain Gaurav. Okay. So are you trying to point who's Gaurav?
No.
Okay.
I was just trying to see who hit the mic.
Okay. So Captain Gaurav, as you are now setting up a system, which of course is running now, Akasa, how do you see human factors being brought into the organization in terms of investigations? And by the time when I say this, Captain Gaurav and Captain Nitin both have been a part of AIB panel of experts for many years. So,
Thanks, Dhruv. Thanks, DG Sab and all of you to attend this. It means a lot. Dhruv, before I answer your question in context to Akasa, I can't resist but clarify a little bit in terms of human factors, which is spoken considerably so far and will be spoken for the rest of the day. One comment, humans are fallible. Anyone believe that humans are not fallible? Everyone here has either made a serious mistake at their job or will make a serious mistake at their job. The consequences may be very different. And this is where, humans, we speak about operational environment, pilots, but the people that regulate the environment are humans, the people that investigate are also humans. So back to humans being fallible, and Eric Holnagel's name's already been taken twice, but I'll revert to Sidney Decker, who speaks about, a field guide to investigation says, why did this person do this and why did it make sense for them to do it at that time? And what that infers is human factors largely is a classification system of where human performance failed. We don't normally speak human factor classification. We speak to just human factors, but it's a classification system on human performance limitations. And why I want to distinguish classification is it's not a code. It's definitely not a penal code. So you don't go and put a human factor label somewhere in an assessment and assign that factor to blame that human, directly or indirectly inferring it, and in a report or in any conduct of whatever safety management systems are. Human factors applies across. If you have a serious incident, attributing human factors are revealed. But that does not mean that that human was the point of failure. It means humans could fail on this competency in this factor in a certain manner. And a substitution test we've done one of the investigations with good guidance from the AIB. Substitution test shows that. When you look at an investigation, when you look at an incident, straight off the bat, you know, this pilot has landed far too long for stopping on the runway. And it makes absolute no-brainer. This is common sense, he got it wrong. But no one goes into why he got it wrong. Then you get into discovery of understanding why he got it wrong. And then you want to figure out whether, when I say he or she got it wrong, and then you want to understand if somebody else, same environment, same setup, would get it wrong. And that, you know, the test, it was a simulation, substitution test, it had a very small sample size. It's reflected in the report. It wasn't significant enough for us to prove beyond reason that this is replicable across. So just the distinction on human factors, classification versus penalizing is very different. You don't have to just put the label. That being said, what is resilience in what we do? How do we make Indian aviation, or aviation in general, resilient? You hire the right people, you train them well, and you write procedures that are fantastic. What do we look at? We look at the person that was either hired in a certain standard, did not receive the required training, or your procedures which everybody else believes is fantastic. Strictest standard operating procedures, international standards, but they're being revised every year. So if they were so perfect, why do they need revision? Because it's a learning organization, it identifies opportunity to improve. And improvement on that is what we need to focus. So coming back to sorry, pet peeve, and I know we're between lunch and Nitin's going to take 20 minutes also, but just to make context that, you know, don't use human factors to classify, label, and assign directly or indirectly blame. It's not intended for that. It's supposed to understand right up to the back end. And Dhruv's presentation clearly says human factors, introduction, organization factors, and then the total environment. And that's the total system that we want to look at in general. From an Akasa standpoint, we were a little bit lucky. We believe we were very lucky. We had some of the most capable people in our management teams, some of them sitting, again, right at the end of this stage. So we had the right experience, capability. We identified early days what would be a vulnerability for us. We invested very heavily in human resilience. So many million flights going well with certain incidents that happen. We raised the bar. We don't want a serious incident. We want to learn from occurrences of safety significance. FOCA, he said it very mildly, but they don't have to revert to safety office. Safety office is not a bad office. It's not soggy biscuits and cold tea every time. Safety office is supposed to do its work in enhancing confidence in the system to the front line. So we've done that by giving them that comfort, working on the culture. And this is, I speak for pilots, but we've done it for engineering, we've done it for ramp operations, cabin crew. We're extremely happy with the reporting culture we have. We have people that are reporting issues that they've observed, some of them that they've done. And then we figure out, again, using reasons model, HFACs, to identify to what level has it been written. And our early discoveries, by the way, were that we've written bad procedures. We've genuinely written bad procedures. They were not executable. In today's day, there is an airport that has a location for the master to stand under the VDGS, but the stop button is 20 meters away. We've written the procedures that he can do both. He can't. We just wrote it badly. For that context, it didn't matter. So Akasa, Dhruv, to the point, is heavily interested in safety culture. We want to demonstrate to our frontline workers that we believe invest heavily in safety culture. We raise the bar of what we call an occurrence, requiring an investigation, and we investigated thoroughly using all of these metrics of HFACs. So non-pilot, non-flight ops related have HFACs. We label that to each occurrence in our system, SMS system. We have FOCA integrated in SMS. So from that, we are able to derive raw parameters of pilot competencies, which are simplistic, but there are times we have interface with pilots at very low thresholds. And that's not, I got a call from safety, oh my God. It is, please tell us what happened. And then we're able to then classify, provide back to flight ops, training, and use that information. We don't have LOSA yet, it's on the cards, but use that information to focus heavily in pilot competencies that can replicate scenarios similar. It doesn't have to be a bad ILS approach done badly. It just means energy management wasn't correct. That can be in any phase of flight. So Akasa is focusing heavily in that context. We have no fear of reporting safety issues, extremely happy with the number of reports. I think we're north of 11,500 reports in just the 2 years that we've been here. All of them acted upon, all of them processed by individuals, so there's no rejected reports, very few rejected reports, but all of them classified. So we're not looking at occurrence. We're trying to learn from the group of occurrences classified under human factors and pilot competencies, to what you alluded to earlier, Dhruv. So that's us from Akasa, but my first point still remains, please use it as classification, not as coding. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. I must tell you about Captain Nitin. Every time I speak to him, I always get amazed by seeing the practicality by which he looks at things and the element of humor which he brings along. So I'm sure it's going to happen today also. So, Captain Nitin, in your thoughts, why do you think we need to investigate anyways, which we do? The human element part of it, what do you think we need to be doing to support people to see that the investigation is not targeted towards an individual, but overall we bring system improvements?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Yugandaji, for putting this together. It's the first step towards bringing human factors. I know everybody said it. I don't want to sound cliche, but thank you so much. So, just to tell you, Yugandaji has been kind enough to give us all a shot of whiskey at 5 o'clock in the evening. You know why? Because when you work for 9 hours, that's the amount of downgrading of motor skills you do. It's equivalent to a shot of whiskey. So, remember on a long-haul flight, it's equivalent to having 2 big whiskey shots, and that's how your motor skills degrade. Remember those, I've been watching everybody, I've been seeing people yawning away. Remember, flight crew also goes through the same thing. They do yawn when they come. And we all got up fresh at 6 o'clock. And we've been yawning away after samosas. I don't know what's going to happen after chola bhaturas in the afternoon. Some people will be sleeping, half the people will be falling off the steps. But that's what exactly happens to human beings in the cockpit. They're as human in the cockpit, in the cabin, and engineering like all of you are. So you people might be sitting in offices, but people who are working on the floor are as human as you. So treat them appropriately. Because what you expect from those humans is, I'm talking about pilots, cabin crew, engineers, exactly the same quality of service in the first hour of flight to the last hour of flight. For example, first hour of a 14-hour flight should be equal to the last hour of 14 flight. It's not possible. It's like me asking you to play Sudoku from 9 to 10 and having the same scores in the same time as playing Sudoku from 4 to 5 in the evening. It's not possible. You will take double of the time. It's normal because everybody's human. So where does the organization come in? First of all, that's why we're not getting chola bhaturas for lunch. We're having something else. So that's why organization comes in. He's not serving us chola bhatura samosa. We fall off it. Airlines also look at it in a different way. For example, we talk of SOPs and SOPs and SOPs. Stabilization criteria to begin with, 1,000 feet. Why should a 1,000 feet criteria be the same for a Delhi-Bombay flight versus a Delhi-New York flight? Why can't we raise the stabilization criteria to 1,500 feet? Yeah? So when, some years back, DGCA came up with this circular, there's a OEM limit for crosswind, and there's a company limit. You can't use the OEM limit because these are done by test pilots. And there's a company limit, which is less by 10 or something. I don't want to dwell too much on it. Because they said, you are not test pilots. Similarly, why can't we have limits down for a fatigued pilot? You want to tell me a pilot who takes off at 10 o'clock at night, his performance is equal to somebody who's taking off at 6 in the morning or landing at 6 in the morning? It's not possible. We are humans, our ability will downgrade. I remember many years back, I was a co-pilot and the captain taught me very well. He said, boss, आज थके हुए हैं, checklist 2 बारी करेंगे. I said, चलो. So it's a very practical example to say, कि boss, आज checklist 2 बारी करेंगे, क्योंकि हम थके हुए हैं. So it happens to all of us. Yeah? For cabin crew who's flown after 16 hours and ends up deploying a slide here and there, it's the fatigue which is coming in. It's the same cabin crew who's opened this and disarmed this door or opened it a million times before. What happened now? Maybe the lady or a man did not have a good night's sleep. And now after 16 hours, there's unruly passengers, there's things all over the place. And now we expect the same kind of performance from her. Boss, if I give you Sudoku at 4 to 5, then I'll ask you what happened here. It's the same. So we have to be mindful about human factors. Human will get tired. And we have to think of organizational barriers, how to stop this. I did one of the inquiries, me and Pasi Saab, on an incident in one of the airlines which landed into Bombay without landing clearance. Everybody says the pilot is stupid. Yeah. Listen, the pilot's tired. Yeah. Pilot is tired, everybody knows. Everybody's tired. Who doesn't like to sleep at night? Everybody sleeps at night. Yeah. Who likes to wake up in the morning? Who likes to shave at 1:30 in the morning and go for a flight? But flight crew have to do that. It's a part of their job. They still get tired. And they don't have any magic rocket science, some chocolate shake they drink and 10 cups of coffee. Yeah, it helps to a moment, but still it's a fatiguing job in the middle of the night. So for the first time in innovation, we put recommendations about looking at fatigue. What has the organization done about it? Did they raise the, for the organization in that case could have said, let's build more automation. Let's not do Cat 2, Cat 3 ILSs in the fag end of your flight. Yeah. Only do automation landing at the fag end of your flight. Don't hand fly the plane when you're really tired. Or raise the stabilization criteria, or do things like that. There are many ways the organization can kick in to help fatigue. Yeah. That's what we need right now, because humans will never change. We will always get fatigue. This world is full of WhatsApp and Instagrams and likes and dislikes. Half the time we are watching what's happening in the world around us instead of, the world was different. There was no mobile phone. But everybody's 24/7 engaged now. It's a world which is very engaged. Communication has gone up, but our communication skills have gone down. People really don't talk to each other. They're busy talking to each other on WhatsApp and things like that. So the similar things are happening. We are getting more fatigued in the brain. I was reading somewhere 15% rise in mental cases in dementia and Alzheimer's there. So because the brain has only so many neurons to kick and so many wires to attach. And if you engage it too much, these things will happen. And one of the interesting things that I want to bring about is post-COVID, when I'm a flight checker also. I saw people, I remember doing a check for 2 pilots, captain, co-pilot. Both their parents had died in 1 month, prior 1 month. They were still had to do that flight exactly the way. Listen, who can go through this trauma and still fly within that month to the best of their ability. So what do? I cancel the check and give them time off here because I was the DFO. So we must look at these things, trauma for losing a parent. There are many traumas people go through here. And expecting them to behave exactly normal is not treating them humanly. It's like treating them in robots. That's where we fail. So treat flight crew, cabin crew, engineers humanly. Build the barriers and you'll see a lot of change in this. Yeah, that's it.
The program is that there'll be a Q&A session with all the panelists, including myself. So the floor is open to you all. So if you all wish to ask a question, so please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Captain Dhruv and his panel. Two things. It is a question and not a question. DGCA has issued an advisory circular. I hope everybody is aware of that, on work-life balance. I don't know if you are aware or not. You must be aware. And I just want to know from the panelists, because they are from different airlines, how or what procedure they have made, though it is an advisory, and yes, DGCA can't issue a mandatory circular or CAR on that. So what all airlines are doing on the panel for implementing that? That is one. It is directly related to fatigue and other things. Second, what about the psychometric reports which we are getting at the recruitment stage? Is any procedure made for that, that how you will be implementing the outcomes of those reports? Thank you.
The second question, I'd rather have Dr. Taneja handle because he's the head of medical, and rather have him handle. The first part, yes, we do understand. I'm a father of a child. I remember when my child was young. My wife used to have sleepless nights. It's impossible. Everybody's been through this. Yes, for the women, they have to have special patterns of roster to adjust to their lifestyles. I'm totally for it. We'll be building things around India because it's not fair to, everybody's going to have children and goes through the thing. Kids wake up at night and expecting a mother to go for a flight in the morning. She's fatigued and she still has to fly because she has to support that little child. So that's where the organization come in to make patterns, flexible patterns. And I think Indigo's done a wonderful job with that. Yeah. We need to learn from them. They need to teach us how they manage the show, where there are many, many flexible patterns. Yeah. Kudos to Indigo. Akasa also? Wait, teach us also. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's it. I hope that answers your question, sir. Yes.
Anybody wants to attempt the second question about the psychometric testing?
Pasi sir, as far as the psychometric test is concerned, so we do this externally. We've been doing this for a long time. Every airline, I suppose, does it. I don't think we are mandated by regulation as far as my memory serves me right now. But psychometric test, as far as Indigo is concerned, at every stage of recruitment, irrespective of what stage of recruitment. So I'll take Captain Dhruv's example. Captain Dhruv came as a very senior, highly experienced pilot from another airline. But when he set foot in Indigo, he was also subjected to a similar psychometric analysis, a test that tests both psychomotor skills and psychological aspects as well. And those are stored in records. What we've embarked on now is, I think there's a fallacy that once you do a psychometric test, say at Nikhil Mathen, who joined Indigo at 20, he's gone through possibly multiple life changes by the time he's reached 30 years old. So does the same thing hold good? I would like to believe that, I don't know how many psychologists are in the building, but there are certain elements that can be subject to change. So my counter argument to the industry in general is what else can we do at more frequent intervals than the one psychometric test that we do at induction, which is what Indigo does through an external partner. We've just embarked on doing something similar at a significant milestone. So say, for example, when they become a captain, we do something at that stage as well, which is not as rigorous as when they join the airline, but something similar. But my recommendation or my thoughts would be to have something like this by trained professionals, of course, at more frequent intervals rather than the one test that happens at induction. For example, the 2015 crash that was spoken of, the unfortunate event at the Alps, that pilot was also subject to a psychometric test when they joined the airline. But obviously they went through certain life changes that the system didn't unfortunately trap. So those would be my thoughts.
Yeah, actually.
Let Captain Gaurav.
I think nobody wants to answer your question. So I'll answer it. What do you do with the psychometric test is your question, and whether not whether it happens or not. So Akasa has psychometric tests for pilots. First, psychometric test is done only for this subject group. Unfortunately, it might be applicable to that same depth for other groups that work in the airline. That's to make the first point. But what does Akasa do is, if anyone's privy to what the psychometry shows, it's like a very oddly shaped chart showing their capabilities, vulnerabilities in different sections. And that tells you two things. One is, if they are exceeding that circle, just imagine a circle and then like a star type shape for quadrants that are there. And if you're exceeding outside the circle defined by us, that we believe is the standard that our training will adapt to. So if I take Captain Nitin, who's an expert pilot, but he's got an outlier somewhere. That's a vulnerability in terms of the competence, capability to deliver, and there should be some focus on training there. And if you take Gaurav, who's just average or below average-ish, but has opportunities in different areas to develop. So that is used. Are we curating pilot-level training programs yet? Sadly, no, not even at Akasa. Are we aware that Gaurav has, so many Gauravs are there in the system, and this is an attribute, so it is done in population level to mitigate training, but it is done at absolute candidate level. If it's outside the line, not fit for purpose training, we will not hire that person for the airlines. It's not as it should be, and we have to also be mindful. It's not possible to deliver at each higher capability to curate trainings. It'll be several thousand trainings for Indigo, having 4,500 pilots. Air India, I guess 3,000-ish. We are a smaller number. But to curate training or mitigation steps based on each person's psychometry score, we are far from it. And I don't think I know of an operator that does it at that level. But we aspire to do it at, cluster data. It shows this is the area you're hiring in this trend, technical, non-technical skills. And to get Mathen's point, should it be done frequently? Not frequently enough to impose on the person, but it should be done at least, landmark progressions for pilots. I think Indigo does it now for upgrades. It's something that we should also look at. Does that suitably answer? Thank you.
Yes, Doctor, I was just waiting. Can somebody give a mic to Dr. Trehan? Doctor, if you could just introduce yourself so it'll get a little easier for people.
Good afternoon, audience. I'll just take 2 minutes to give our perspective from Air India. I'm Dr. Taneja. I was in the Indian Air Force for 37 years, aviation medicine specialist, and 2 years of training on human factors in the US. I've just joined Air India last month, and as far as the question on psychometry is concerned, we are doing. We are using various psychometric tests, some for initial, some for trained aviators. But the numbers are too small to decide on inclusion or exclusion of a candidate based on this. The first problem, which at least I've understood from the tests that we are using, we do not have a typical cockpit crew profile on these tests. And unless you have a sort of a profile, it would be unfair to exclude people based on what Captain said that they have decided for Akasa, possible. But on our data yet, we are just trying to collate our data about for the last 2 years. So it will be some time before we validate the inventories that we are using, move on to a little more, and probably that would be the way forward. But right now we are compiling, collating what we have understood from these psychometric tests for the cockpit crew. On the issue of regularly should we do, the Indian Air Force doesn't do. We do psychometry at entry, and that's it. So we were not in favor of doing it repeat even when this mental health issues came up and the circular. The Indian Air Force does not do. So I'm not sure what it would look like. If you were to find a change in the psychometric tests, what would be the consequence management after 20 years of an aircrew staying with you? That would be a difficult question or difficult situation to address.
Great, thank you, Doctor. And just to complete the psychometric thing, so people who just need to get updated, so 1993 circular of DGCA, okay, which talks about flight safety awareness and oversight, there is a reference to the psychometric testing. Then there have been some cases investigated by AIB. There have been safety recommendations to that. And in the recent one in 2020, when there was a fatal accident, in that also there is a lot of write-up regarding psychometric testing as such. So, of course, the one which took place in Europe also has kind of enhanced that discussion. So I'll leave it here, and I will shift to Captain S.N. Reddy wanted to ask a question. So while he's getting the mic, he's one of our senior most instructor examiners in Indian aviation, and he's currently the CEO of Telangana Aviation, and he's been a trainer for most of us. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to know, we have extended the age limit for pilots from 58 to 60, 60 to 65. Is any research being done how the human factors or how their performance is being done? What is expected at a pilot who is the commander at the age of 30 or 40 years old, and when this age extension has been given, so what is their human factors affecting at the age of 64 or 65 years?
Right.
Is any research being done, or is any follow-up being done, so that it should not affect the safety of the aircraft? Right.
Thank you for that question. I'll first ask the panelist if somebody wants to answer something, or maybe from the audience also. If not, I have some thoughts on it. Please. Okay.
There is a paper recently published, I think it's icao, which Dhruv may have forwarded to me, so I'll let Dhruv speak on it. But to summarize, that paper talks about non-age-related cognitive physical capabilities of a pilot for medical testing. So in terms of age, there's a paper research done that we want to find these cognitive and physical abilities for a pilot. If that is demonstrated, or rather, let's put it the other way, it is failed to be demonstrated at 55 or 50, you don't get a medical certificate. But if someone at, for example, 70 is able to demonstrate the same, it is permitted, but they haven't changed the rule framework. It is just one study.
Right.
And Dhruv, since you forwarded it to me, I was just trying to look smarter.
Right,
You'll-
no,
you'll
just
explain
fine.
it better.
Thank you. So just to bring out a couple of perspectives here. First thing is, how does the system balance each other? So there's a DGCA regulation which says that two pilots above the age of 60 cannot fly together. There is a regulation which has come out. Now it goes to the operator. Operator is expected to implement that, and there are checks and balances in the system that two pilots above the age of 60 don't fly together. That is one. Second thing is, DGCA again has got a lot of medical requirements above the age of 60. One being is that every 6 months you go through medical. In the past, anybody holding an air transport pilot's license had to go through a medical every 6 months, which got revised few years ago. Now, pilots above the age of 60 are required to undergo medical every 6 months with a lot of tests which are there. Now it comes to that part of it. One of the thoughts which is there is our medical standards realistic? So that probably some of my colleagues sitting here also would like to debate it. I can see Dr. Taneja having a smile. But all I can appeal to you from the pilot fraternity side is that let's keep the standards the way international standards are. And I can tell you, a lot of pilots who leave Indian aviation is not because of the work culture. It's because of the medical standards. No offense meant, doctor. Okay? Because we have to accept one fact, that when people get old, body also degenerates. I'll give you an example. There is something called pure tone audiometry. I don't know how many of you are aware. The ICAO says once every 5 years we need to do this. But the reality is when you go and do a medical in FAA or EASA somewhere, the examiner just talks to you and he certifies it. But here we have to put those hearing aids and listen, and some frequency he'll say there's a loss here, loss there. But the reality is, as a pilot, do I need to be listening to those frequencies? Those days are gone, where radio ranges and all are being used for navigation and all. Today, it's simple communication which takes place, and there are standards which are being followed over the world that you are allowed to fly with a hearing aid also. That's just being normal, you know, that people will have a loss of hearing, some people will have a little higher blood pressure. Now changing the context, the paper he was referring to, there's an ICAO white paper which has been developed. There are some countries who do not have a retirement age. Isn't that shocking? You go across to New Zealand, there is no restriction. You continue to fly a civil airliner in New Zealand if you're 80 also. There are pilots who are of that age. But because bilateral agreements don't permit, they fly domestically. So what is important is to see is that whether a person fits into the basic requirement. Obviously, a person who's 70 years old will not be as fit as a pilot who's 18 years old. What is required is saying that, do we have the right balance? The person is fit enough to fly, let him enjoy. But yes, it also means that we need to protect the younger generation coming in, that they continue to get employed, move from right seat to the left seat, not that the person 80 years old continues to occupy the left seat and the guy on the right seat never gets his upgrade. So debatable things as such, but to Sir's question which was there, that I would request somebody like GSV, a university which is from the Act of Parliament which they have come up, it's an aviation, they are coming up with an aviation wing. Universities like this should start now taking up the safety data for analysis, medical data, accident data, bird strike data. There needs to be an analysis which is done by organizations which are not sitting within the industry. They have to be university-led research. They come with a different perspective to give us an idea, what is the data telling us? Probably all of us who are from the aviation, we are already having some colored vision. It is only people in the university who can actually do good research and tell us. I'll take example here of aviation safety reporting system from FAA. Interestingly, it is not managed by FAA. It is managed by NASA. The data, all the aviation data goes to NASA. They do the analysis and come out with a de-identified report and the recommendations for the industry. So my appeal would be saying that universities like GSV, they should pick up this kind of research and come up with information for the large benefit of people, which would include medical also, sir. Right? Thank you. Any other? Yes, please. If you can just introduce yourself and then ask your question, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chandramani Pandey, Director of Operation Aerodrome Standards, DGCA. My question is related to the fatigue. As we heard about the fatigue is the important factor for all the aircraft incident and accident. My question is whether it is the main factor or the other factors which comes under the human factors are the main factors. For example, whatever the various factors you mentioned in your slides. So apart from fatigue, there were so many other factors. So as per the data, do you have any data which reflects that fatigue is the only main factor for these accidents? That's
I'll answer that, sir. आपने अल्को सेंसर तो सुना है जो अल्कोहल मॉनिटर करता है, कभी फटीगोमीटर सुना है? सर अभी दुनिया में बना ही नहीं फटीगोमीटर. There is nothing which measures fatigue. It's just a calculation to say fatigue could be a contributory factor because you can never measure fatigue. There is no airline, no system in the world, nobody in the world before a flight asked the pilots to do a Sudoku. Listen, if you did Sudoku in 20 seconds, you're good to fly. So fatigue is always a contributory factor because nothing can measure it. As far as I know, till now, nothing can measure it. You cannot measure like you do the alcohol sensor. But the effect of fatigue is same like drinking alcohol. 9 hours of work is equal to drinking 1 peg of alcohol. That's why you correlate that fatigue is equal to alcohol. Your motor skills downgrade. But there is no test per se to say that. I know Indigo did some mathematics here and there when their pilot died, and they did some, I don't know the research of that. But I haven't come across how to measure fatigue. So because we're human, and humans get fatigued, and humans make error, so we say that after 14, 15, 16 hours, you will get fatigued. Any normal human being will get fatigued. Well, if somebody runs a 42-kilometer marathon every second day, like us, DG sir runs marathon and he's fit. I learned that he runs marathons very regularly. You can get less fatigue, but he'll still be fatigued. With age, it only gets worsened. That's what I'm saying. And always, it's a contributory factor. I hope I answered the question.
And just to add to what Nitin said is, again, in at least the Indian accident investigation reports, human factors largely has been a little bit of a desirable input to reports. In context to its true sense, what we're discussing today, it has to be contextualized and brought. So to your question, is it a significant or not significant would depend on the fact whether the investigators actually went that extra bit to identify it. And its absence does not mean it's not a factor. So when we're speaking about fatigue, emphatically, it may not replicate in some of the reports statistically, but it is still very, very significant to what Nitin said.
Good afternoon. My name is Vipin Sharma. I am from Border Security Force Aviation Wing. I'm a research scholar at IIT Jodhpur in aviation safety. So as you have presented a slide starting from the technical era, then human factors era, then organizational and systematic era. And most of the speakers spoke about Eric Hall-Nagel and the Sidney Decker. But if you look at the manuals, which are rather, be it the ICAO manuals or the DGC or AIB manual, we are still following the models of 60s, 70s, that is Swiss cheese model of 90s, and the, what do you call the other models of investigations. Whereas in the last 20, 25 years, the most systematic models have come up, like the frame of Eric Hall-Nagel, the HFAX you mentioned in 2001, and the Nancy Levinson's model of stamp and cast of accident investigation. So my point is, there seems to be a huge difference. The 2009 paper of Eric Hall-Nagel, he mentioned that what you look for is what you find, and what you find is what you fix. So in terms of accident investigation, if you are looking at the models of 1960s, 70s, or the 90s, like Swiss cheese model or HFAX, are we still finding the same causes or contributing factor, or are we trying to find little more systematic aspects of the organization, which probably the HFAX is not able to find out beyond the organization level? Thank you.
So let me take that. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll initiate because I think what you mentioned, Nancy Levinson and all of these are analysis models and they're methods rather than just focusing on human factors, which is the discussion for today. There are in excess of 100 such methods. There are different adaptations between what the epidemiological, STAMP, STEP, and there are different contexts and how they can be applied from an investigation standpoint. There's a very good research paper done that compares all existing methodologies, and I think the AIB has had some of these analysis methods taught in the AIB courses. To your point, why are we still in one versus the other? The adaptation, the literature says categorically that it is up to the investigator and the incident accident that they're investigating to apply a methodology that is relevant. For example, FRAM, which is an extremely complex networked methodology, which is used usually in nuclear setups where failures occur, can be applied to an accident in aviation. But do you have the right set of people to apply FRAM in its correct context, in its complexities, to derive an outcome, for example, of a serious incident vis-a-vis a fatal accident? And even in a fatal accident, FRAM might not give you much because your early detection of evidence, and when you look at investigation, there is a whole bunch of evidence collection, analysis, and then reporting. That's another diagram that comes up. And analysis and evidence gathering is kind of coherent throughout the investigation process to the report writing. Analysis methods are up to the investigator, typically speaking. Basis the evidence, you'll apply an analysis method, and of course, basis your own comprehension, you would apply analysis methods. And that's why, initially, at present time rather, we do not have analysis of even human factors excessively, as its opportunity could have presented in investigation reports existing till date. Should we have it? Yes. Has attempts been made to address it? Yes. But again, just like for like, taking the new tech is not necessarily, or new research and applying it readily is not necessarily the best fix. I'll again go back to, if you recall Dhruv's presentation on 3rd and 4th generation aircraft. I don't know if any of you saw it, but the 3rd generation aircraft, when the 4th generation aircraft starts coming into being, had a higher accident rate. The 4th generation aircrafts were having a higher accident rate for the reason that the pilots, operators did not understand the technology advancement. They did not have training programs that was coherent. The same applies for investigators. I can get you the most complex analysis method. Will it be readily applied, and is it even feasible to apply? So I wouldn't say dated and new, I would say relevant. You know, STEP, STAMP are easier methods. Epidemiological is very easy. James Reason is very easy to apply. It usually covers and encompasses quite a bit of the exposure to incident accident that you would be investigating in civil aviation. So it's that context. It doesn't necessarily need to be outdated. It's no longer common, by the way, just putting in context.
Yes, sir.
Myself, Vikas Unyambat, sir. I have been a consultant for DGCA for 5 years, now working with Chips and Aviation as senior safety manager.
Right.
Since we are discussing on the human factors involving, I had seen we are mostly focusing on the flight crew. And we have so many SOPs and other things, how a pilot should behave in the cockpit and how he should be taking care of safety. At the same time, the same pilot, when he comes out, he may take a wrong side drive on his car just to save a 50 meters or go a drive and take a U-turn. So why not we make safety as a aspect to just to fly, than make it as a habit throughout his life? Why don't we start culturing our youngsters always to take safety at par with the profession?
So just to add to that, can I take that question? So in the Western world, safety education doesn't start when you start working. It starts off in high school, in schooling level. So that's where they start setting the concept of safety into the children, be it safety at work, be it safety at home, be it driving, walking. So the concept of safety starts off wearing a helmet, wearing the right type of shoes and guards while playing football and things like that. So yes, I agree with you, but the work has to start much earlier as compared to what it is. Anyway, so we are running short of time for this particular panel, but before I end, I want to make one statement which was made more than about 3,000-4,000 years ago. To err is human. So be it somebody who's a flight crew, maintenance, cabin crew, just remember that they are also human beings. They work under a lot of pressure. Errors do happen, and nobody actually wants an error. Okay? So when you next time look at an occurrence which takes place, first is let the investigators do their job. Let's not start doing investigation on the side. And the other thing is, the person who's involved into it, my request to you is that look at it in a manner that, okay, it's a human being, something happened, let the team investigate, and let's see what we learn. Thank you once again. I would like to thank the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And the beautiful lady we have on the stage for this amazing panel discussion. And as we conclude this discussion, we are opening the floor for lunch and networking. So I'll try to request all of you to be back in next 30 minutes.